Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunworks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear. Scott, hey, welcome to the podcast. This week's Long Range Pursuit's going to talk a little bit about some side passions that you and I both have that are maybe not exactly firearms, but definitely connected in the pursuit of excellence. So, little aviation story.
For sure.
Scott, so we've been catching up. We've kind of crossed over a little bit in, the circles. Like I have my circle team here with sales and with projects and excitement, and you've kind of come into our business that way, and then you have, we have mutual customers, and such a cool connection that we've made in these mutual spaces. So why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about like your background and where you're coming from with this aviation story.
Okay, great. Well, I'm both fixed wing and rotorcraft rated pilot, instructor. I've been flying for almost 38 years now. And I started flying helicopters first, obtained my helicopter rating, and then moved into fixed wing when I met Mike Dillon, and I was manufacturing Dillon reloading equipment in my machine shop for Mike. We both had a passion for guns. Mike was in the middle of trying to get this minigun working, and so it was like a hobby. But the hobby included guns and helicopters and airplanes. So we mounted the minigun on the helicopter and went out and shot it because, who wants to shoot it at the range? And that's how the task force used the gun. So no better way to test than in actual conditions. And
so were you actually doing work, or were you just playing?
We were playing, but it turned into work.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it was one of those things where I used to go home and tell my wife, wow, people actually, you can get paid to do this. I'm getting paid to go play with Mike, and I get to go shoot machine guns and fly helicopters.
Well, I always wondered what that connection was with Dillon reloading equipment, because we've been using that forever to load and manufacture our ammunition. But the connection between that and the miniguns, because I thought that was such a leap to go from one to the other, and now we kind of know the secret story.
And Mike was a aviator before he was a reloading manufacturer. He was a crop duster, and then an airline pilot. And you may not know this, but Mike had an unlimited letter of authorization to fly any high-performance propeller-driven airplane made, and that includes every warbird. He used to write for Air Progress magazine, and he was an incredible pilot.
So tell me how that, what did he have to do to get that kind of a certificate?
So when you fly, I fly warbirds. So depending on the warbird that I fly, if it's not in limited category, like a P-51, some of them are in limited, some of them are not. A P-40, a Corsair, those are all experimental. So you need an experimental authorization to fly those aircraft. So it used to be you'd have to go and take a check ride. You had to find an examiner, and if he couldn't sit in the airplane with you, he would put you in a North American T-6 in the back seat and see if you could fly the airplane and land it, and then he would stand on the ground and observe you flying this airplane. Well, when you obtained so many of those ratings in different warbirds, you could apply for an unlimited letter of authorization. And I could be wrong on this number, but I think there were like less than 20 people that had one of those in the world.
Well, I've been really intrigued. I'm not an enthusiast in terms of like the warbirds, but you do one trip to Oshkosh and you start to get pulled in that direction. There's magnetism to check that out.
Sure.
But I'm kind of curious about like the P-51, and you go start looking at the performance specs on that, like what they do for, G's and speeds and all this performance and horsepower. And then I look at this TBM that I have, and I start looking at those numbers. I'm like, wow, this is a very, very comparable airplane. Now you look at the G stuff, there's a little difference there. Sure. But in terms of like performance, it's very interesting.
Yeah, the wing and the horsepower.
Yeah.
I think I sent you an article that I did a flight test program on the P-51 to disprove the torque roll recently.
Yeah.
So after 2 years of flight testing, everybody that flies the P-51, when they add power, they end up off the runway. And there's several things going on there. There's a lot of physics, as you would understand. So you have the gyroscopic forces of bringing the tail up And if, depending on the speed that you're at, you may not be able to have enough available aerodynamic rudder authority to counteract the physics of gyroscopic precession, which is usually what kills people. They end up off the runway.
Yeah.
The other thing is they stall the left wing before the right wing, and they think this is torque. Well, it's the ascending propeller blade creating a higher angle of attack on the left wing than the right wing.
This is the same problem that exists in the TBM space.
Exactly. And it's because there is not good instruction, and a lot of pilots don't understand really the physics behind the slipstream effect and how important that is. So
is there a technique then that came out of that study?
Yes, it was really being good at buffet tracking, being able to track the buffet of the airplane. So when you feel the buffet in the turn, you know, you can sense it. You don't need to look at an airspeed indicator, and you can see it. We tufted the wings of the airplane with yarn tufts, and we put cameras on it, and we connected it all to data logging. I mean, we took an 80-year-old airplane that never saw that. From the day it was designed to the first flight was 123 days, the P-51. That's impressive.
Yeah, it sure is.
And, there's a lot more engineering went into your airplane, right? And that's probably why it flies so good.
Yeah.
But we were trying to go to war, right? And it was all about getting the machine to the front and, combating our adversaries. So consequently, it never really saw good testing. And now today we have data acquisition, which we didn't have then, right? So we have full telemetry. We can download it live. So there's a lot of really interesting things that came from that. But I think Dillon Reloading Equipment was born from the passion of flying and being, Mike wasn't an educated engineer, but he had an incredible mind, incredible background in engineering. And so that worked right into the Dillon Reloading Equipment.
Well, technically you think about aviation and think about all the advancements in aviation and all the inventions and all the products and all the companies. What percentage do you think is created by the typical engineer, with the software and the calculations and that effort versus the guys that go do and learn? Like, I think aviation's got a lot of brilliant minds that aren't engineers that just go create and do.
Sure.
And it's kind of a scrappy, learn on the fly type situation. I mean, you go look, it's like they're not going to tell you exactly how a wing produces lift. They have some theories and some pretty good ideas,
right,
but it doesn't encompass the entire scope
of
what does that. So the engineering science in terms of aviation isn't complete.
No.
And it feels like there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurship,
improvement, right,
ingenuity.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing you do, testing to failure. Yeah. Elon Musk is my favorite example, right? He tests to failure and learns and continues to move on. I'm sure that's why I mentioned to you earlier, you remind me of Mike in the fact that, you don't accept something because somebody else does it. You don't accept it because it's the standard. You test and validate and get your own data. And I think that's what we can do. And that's what aviation is so interesting. We have all this opportunity to improve and make some great improvements. I mean, you look at this, you look at Igor Sikorsky, you look at Bob Hoover. I mean, I had the opportunity to know Bob Hoover. And I mean, when you see these stick and rudder skills that these people have learned, I mean, he was a test pilot. That's how he developed all this. I mean, it's just amazing that, aviation has grown. I mean, if you look at it, it wasn't that long ago that we learned to fly, right? And we've made some vast improvements, but the Second World War was what gave us that opportunity out of the need.
Yeah, there was such a beautiful thing that happened in our country as a result of that. It's such an ugly thing.
Right.
But you watch what our country accomplished, and yeah, it was pretty cool.
Look at weapons.
Yeah. Just manufacturing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Economy and dominance.
Yeah.
It proved what the kind of the American experiment was all about and what it could accomplish when it needs to. Yeah,
exactly.
We need to recapture some of that, I think, a little bit.
Sure.
I think some of the new Mosaic rules are going to create maybe a new flood of innovation in a certain segment of aviation. I'm seeing it. There's a company I've been following for a while. It's called Bushliner.
Mm-hmm.
They have this 1850. It's like a 190 Cessna, right?
Uh-huh.
It's just big bodied, huge lift, load them up, really cool backcountry
airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're going to crush it in that space, I think.
Oh yeah, and you look at Cub Crafters and
Yep.
all these companies that they build. I mean, you look at a Cub Crafters airplane versus a Super Cub, and they've taken an old airplane and redesigned it and put new technology in it, and with finite element analysis and SolidWorks and all these things.
And some test and check.
It's a test and check for sure. So, but testing is great. You know, I'm an experimental test pilot as well. I've done test flying for Bell Helicopter and several manufacturers, and that's what I love about it is the ability to, you know, you come up with the test plan and then you fly the flight and you're like, wow, that didn't turn out anything.
I would be nervous as heck to test fly a helicopter.
Yeah, there's some interesting things that happen. So
yeah, you get a failure. It's not like, okay, well, I've got a wing that produces lift and I can just fly it into the ground.
Sure, there's a lot of moving parts in the helicopter, so you have to be really confident in the machine you're flying for sure.
Well, you know, before we move on, I just want to say, if there's ever a chance for me to climb in a P-51, and there's a crossover,
Yeah,
and
we can
if
make
I
that
have
happen.
to fly somewhere to make this happen, I'm in.
Okay.
That would be awesome.
We'll get you on that project. We have a cool project we're working on now that's a little under the wraps, but I'll throw something out there. I'm a Class 2 manufacturer of machine guns, and I am in the process now of building 6 Browning 50s, and they're A&M 2s. And those went in P-51 Mustangs. So that might give you an idea what we're going to do.
Very cool.
So when we do that, we might.
And you're in Phoenix, right?
I'm in Phoenix.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's continue kind of on this aviation connection. I want to talk just a little bit about that helicopter, you know, fixed wing, kind of some differences in training and just for me, just understanding how those cross over. Because this last year, I started training in a TBM, did a big checkout initial because I'm such a low hour pilot. They're like insurance or
Sure.
Prove it.
Yeah, right.
So we did like a big checkout, and then I have a really cool little hot rod 182. It's got a 340 horsepower engine in it, set up with big tires, backcountry.
Oh, nice.
You know, vortex generators. It's a really cool airplane. But I found myself not wanting to go back and forth between those two airplanes because they land so much differently, and I'm just trying to get this one thing just baked in where there's, you know, certainty.
Sure.
So I understand that the helicopter airplane thing is also just completely different.
Sure. I'll tell you, I do think that there's some advantage to not just flying one type of airplane or helicopter. I've flown 100 different airplanes and probably 40 different helicopters, and I currently own several, and I'm going from a helicopter that the blade rotates counterclockwise to clockwise, and I flew here in my Citation, and I have a North American T6, and as you know, I fly the P-51. So what I think that does for me is I never become complacent.
Okay.
I get into the aircraft, I get the checklist out, I use the checklist. I even have briefing cards that I've made for all the different airplanes I fly. Before I go fly, I review all the emergency procedures, and it forces you to not become complacent because everybody thinks every airplane flies the same, and they don't. They fly much different. And you don't develop rote memory based on this is how I do it. You do it by truly feeling it, and that's what test flying is. A test flying is not what people think it is. It isn't like, oh, I'm going to go and see how fast this airplane goes. It's a build-up process, right? You start, build a 5-knot build-up. Do I see any changes? No. Okay. Another 5-knot build-up. Oh, that didn't react how I thought it would, so I back up. And I think that's what I've learned from training people. I trained one of your customers that you know real well, and he was an airplane guy. I trained him in a helicopter. I'll never forget the first, second, or third flight. He's like, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. This doesn't fly. This isn't supposed to fly. I can't let go of the controls. There's no trim. What's going on here? Then." It's like riding a bike is what I tell people when I give them their lessons. And I had the opportunity to teach Daryl Greenemeyer to fly helicopters. And Daryl was a SR-71 test pilot. He holds to this day the low altitude world speed record at, I believe, like 1.6 Mach in an F-104. And he held the propeller driven speed record in a Bearcat for many, many years till recently. And I'll never forget, I took him out and I'm giving him the controls, and I gave him the cyclic stick. And I said, okay, let's just start with this, Daryl. He goes, I'm a test pilot. Give me all the controls. So I give him all the controls, and he looks over and he goes, if I flew an airplane that flew this poorly, I would eject. And he said, this is like sitting on top of a basketball and trying to balance. And I said, yeah, except when it hits, when it clicks, it's all going to come together. You're not going to think about it. So I think there's positive transfer by flying multiple machines like that, and they all perform differently. They all have their own little nuances that we need to learn. And I think what it does is it keeps you sharp.
I like that. I want to just quiz you just a little bit on this briefing card. Maybe share with me just a little bit of information about what you would include on that briefing card.
So I use my son, when he was 10 years old, turned me on to this app called Chegg Cards.
Okay.
And it's a little app that you put on your phone, and I have an iPad. You have an iPad, I'm
Yep.
sure, in your airplane. So for every of these different airplanes I have, I made cards, flashcards for EPs, emergency procedures. So I go through that, I put all the emergency procedures, engine
Yep,
out,
yep.
And then you push the button, it flips it over, and it gives you the four
Yep,
things
yep.
that you do. Then I have all the V speeds and
Yep.
review the V speeds, make sure I know where those speeds are, right? All the performance numbers for flaps, gear, depending on what I'm flying. And it literally takes you 15 minutes to review this, and you can kind of check yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's super important that we do that.
So how differentiate that from a checklist?
So this is more of a question and answer.
Okay.
So you create the question and you try and answer it, and then you push the button, it flips the card over,
Yeah.
and it says this is the right answer.
Okay.
And it allows you to go through, and when you get them correct, you mark them, and then it stores those away, and the ones you don't remember, it keeps those live.
Okay.
And then you keep...
Yeah. So when I was learning the TBM, I used Quizlet.
Yeah.
Same exact
Same
thing.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to start baking in that information,
Right.
because a lot of that stuff you kind of want to have ready.
You're not pulling out the checklist in a real emergency.
Correct.
I've had 2 engine failures in helicopters, and there's no time to pull out the checklist.
Yeah.
I've had several emergencies in airplanes, and that has to be rote memory to you. And I think so many people think nothing's going to happen. And as you know, the TBM's not hard to fly as long as nothing's going wrong.
Yeah.
And if you're in the weather and you have an emergency procedure and you're by yourself, your hands can be full. We had somebody that we knew that was killed in an airplane crash recently, and flying the same similar airplane, and I'm coming up here and I'm like, okay, well, the weather could be cruddy this afternoon, and I'm single pilot rated. I fly
Yeah.
by myself all the time, and I call my buddy Troy and I'm like, hey, what are you doing today? You want to go with me? He's a professional pilot. This is what he does too.
Yep.
We both have instructed in jets. We have the checklist. If anything goes wrong, the workload's half.
I got to fly 140 hours this year in that TBM
Mm-hmm.
with somebody sitting next to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I've only been signed off for about a month, and so I've tried to go do some trips by myself
Sure.
and control, the scenarios and the situations. But still, it's like single pilot resource management is intense.
Yes. And you have to, I always tell my customers, I've trained some of the wealthiest people in the world to fly helicopters, and I sit them down and I tell them, listen, I'm not going to be responsible for killing, name the person.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you limitations. And there's this aircraft, this A-Star that I landed in your parking lot, is the same model that landed on the top of Mount Everest. You're probably not capable of landing it there. I'm probably not capable of landing it there. But we're going to find out, and we're going to develop tools for you to say what your limitation is. And you have the limitations of the aircraft, you have your personal limitations, and then you have the weather limitations. And anytime you exceed 2 of those, bad things happen. And you have to respect it.
Yeah.
It's like the P-51. It's a great airplane, properly trained. You could fly it, no problem. But if you didn't get good training and something went wrong, it will probably end up bad.
Yeah.
So, you have to respect the machine and fly within your personal limitations.
Yeah. There's normal operations, and then there's abnormals.
Yes.
And I think, from my experience, normal operations, proficiency is attainable.
Yes.
Like quickly attainable.
Yes.
It's those abnormals that are just like even just little things.
Yes.
Just a little abnormal. That's what gets everybody. It seems
Oh,
like.
for sure.
I'm asking you because I think So we've been doing long range university since 2007. I started this 2007, and we just like there's so many complex things that people can learn about to like not just do normal operations, which is okay, well there's my target, here's the range, here's the adjustment, take the shot. But it's like, well, what if my data's not lining up? Or, what if that shot doesn't impact where I think, and I'm in this crisis, crunch time situation? What is my response? What is my reaction? Did I see the shot? Do I have the techniques that allow me to follow through and, make another attempt if I miss? And so we realized that by bringing people into this training environment and bringing them through, response or understanding the fundamentals that kind of underlie the whole system, then they can troubleshoot. It's like, hey, I have this issue. It's like, can I troubleshoot this in camp or at home or whatever?
Right.
And I think it's a very common thing. I don't want to knock a company that just does like virtual training, so I won't use their name, but like there's this two-phased approach towards learning how to fly a TBM. You actually go fly with like an expert, or you go fly in a simulator and then they kick you out, and that plane is really interesting. Like you drop 40 degrees of flaps in and come in to land, and your nose is pointing straight down at the ground. Like it is way different than coming in with a Cessna. So I don't see how that training is the right one. And I see this in our space all the time. Guys, they take them out to the range and let them shoot 1,000-yard plate, and they ring the plate, they hit it, and they're like, wow, I can shoot 1,000 yards or a mile.
Right.
And let them shoot. And it's like, that's really sensational and exciting. But if you don't have the fundamental skill to reproduce it at home, then what did you get out of that experience? You didn't actually get trained. You just kind of had an entertaining session.
Yes, and you're doing scenario-based training.
Yeah.
I came to your long-range university. I had never, I was telling Derek today, I had shot when I was a kid 200-300 yards maybe, and now I question, how did my dad even know how far it was? I shot and I missed, and he's like, yeah, I aimed at the top of his back, and my wife just shot her second elk, but first elk with a Gunworks rifle a few weeks ago, 500 yards plus. She ranged it with the new BR-10s. Her guide, I showed him how to use it. He put the wind in, gave her a wind hold, one shot down.
Perfect.
And my son, 2 days before, shot his first elk, and he had only shot 10 shots out of my rifle, 550 yards. Same thing. I ranged it for him, shot it.
Yep.
But what I think you're doing at the Long Range University, when we did these little scenario-based training where we would switch shooters, and that's what we need. You need scenario-based training in flying, and you need scenario-based training in shooting. And there's a lot of
just
positive
look at that
transfer.
similarity right there that you disclosed, which was support. Like it's not single shooter resource management, right? It's a crew.
It's a flight crew.
Shooter spotter team, right? And it's the same thing in aviation. It's like by dividing that workload, now you can focus on a more specific, like a pilot versus a communicator.
Sure.
Like for example, I go to Class D. Like right now, we talk about limitations. It's like I have limitations that I don't do Class Bravo without another pilot with me.
Sure.
Now that limitation probably doesn't last that long.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 more trips to Vegas or something, right? And then I start to build a little bit more comfort and a little bit more response and skill set. And then maybe I can remove that limitation. But right now it's a limitation.
It is.
And you look at a shooter that comes to our class, some of those guys, maybe they have a limitation by themselves. And the best thing that we could do as an outcome in our class is for somebody to realize, hey, look, if I'm by myself, like 10 mile an hour wind, 600 yards, that's it. Like if it's bigger than this, I'm not doing it.
Right.
If I'm with a known and trusted, shooter, for example, if you go to our friend down in South Africa and go hunt with Carl Van Zel, John X Safaris, like his whole PH staff for a decade, we've trained them on wind and on the right setup, the right way to approach. It's like those guys will take somebody that might only be 500 or 600 yards limitation for themselves, and they're going to give him the potential to shoot a half mile just because of that extra input.
Sure.
Just like your son, he's got 10, 12 shots in. If you would have said, hey, make this shot by yourself.
He couldn't have done it.
Right.
Yep.
But with that extra little bit of input, now all of a sudden 600 probably wouldn't have been a problem, right?
Sure. We had 5 tags this year we got, and we made 5 shots with Gunworks rifles and got 5 animals.
It's
impressive.
Cool.
It is really impressive. And
so when did you buy? Did you buy last year?
I bought a year and a half ago.
And tell me, how did you come into our group?
So Ty, our mutual friend, I was up training him in Worland, and one day, 3 years ago, he takes me into his gun room, and there's these Gunworks rifles. He goes, "Oh, my son's working at this company. You got to get one of these." He shot this, what did he shoot? A mountain lion from 1,000 yards. And I'm like, what? And he's telling me about the guns and how much they are and everything, and I've been a gun guy. I've got expensive machine guns, and, I'm like, whatever. And so then my wife, one of my neighbors called me and said, "Hey, can you transfer a gun? Because I'm a dealer." So this Gunworks rifle shows up, right? And I get it. I'm like, this thing's pretty nice, and he comes over and he is just all excited. He's coming to the Long Range University with one of our other neighbors who has been a customer of yours for probably 10 years. And he hunts in Africa and everything, and they're going to go up there. And so they go up and do all that. And then my wife says, "Hey, I want to go elk hunting." And I'm like, "Well, we can't get drawn. We put in, and, I quit putting in Arizona because you just couldn't get drawn." And we had a mutual friend said, "Hey, I get you a tag on a friend of mine's ranch in New Mexico." So we get a tag, and I pull a rifle out for my wife, take her out to the Dillon range and let her shoot a few rounds, and she gets an animal, and she's just all fired up. So now I'm thinking about these rifles. My friends come back from Long Range University, and they're telling me about this whole thing. So my son-in-law is over, and I'm like, okay, we got to get a couple of these. So we order 2 Nexus rifles. And we get them in, and we go out to the Dillon range, and they have steel to 1,200, and we set up out there, and we know nothing about what we're doing other than, your rifles are guaranteed, a half a minute of angle, 1,000 yards. So we start shooting 100, 200, 300. We didn't even sight them in. 500. I'm like, 800. Bing. And I look over at my son-in-law, and I said, "Well, that was worth every penny." And he goes, yeah, this is great. We got to get drawn. So we put in for all these hunts. We got drawn in Idaho. My son-in-law and I did. So we went up there and both got a couple elk at another customer who has your rifle, who's never been to your class. And I was with him, and he didn't have the Revic app. He had the binoculars, and he spots an antelope at 6:45. So we get up on him, and I range it for him, and he has no app. So I get my 6.5 app out, and it's blowing like 15 knot crosswind. I'm like, yeah, hold whatever, 3 MOA. And he holds and drops him, like, wow, that was 3 for 3. And then we come back. I go coos deer hunting in area 35 in southern Arizona, and I make a 400 and some yard shot a coos deer. Then my wife and son and I go up to northern Arizona. My son gets his first elk, and then my wife shoots one, and I'm like,
awesome.
Wow, incredible. So that's how we found out about Gunworks.
So, like, funny story, that the same thing, there's this crossover group, right?
Sure.
So I met William Goldberg, who does like a lot of the recurrent and initial training for TBMs in the country. Like, his business has lots of pilots that do these training. Really cool business. So he actually lives in Cody in the summertime. And so when somebody would come in and do recurrent training as a entertainment or something like that, because he's into guns, he would bring them down, and they would go through the shop here. And so he'd show them the shop, and they would have a great time, and some of those guys would buy some guns. Well, he brings one customer down, customer buys a gun. Next year, a customer comes out for recurrent training, and he says, "Hey, do you want to come fly a TBM?" And that customer, basically let me go fly his TBM, and William took off, let me fly it over to Montana and back, and flew around the canyon, and like, compared to my 182, it was such a different experience.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so exciting. But it's the same way with guns. It's like, you get introduced to aviation, and you can get sucked in that way, which is a little more expensive than a gun.
Sure.
But the same thing happens. Your aviation buddies will pull you into firearms.
Sure.
And get sucked in and kind of embark on a whole new
I just
adventure.
saw one of our customers' Nexus rifles on the rack right now, getting ready to be delivered, and he's a helicopter customer. We just took him to Alaska. We do a trip every other year from Phoenix to Alaska for a month. And we took him last year, he and his wife, and they're hunters. And so my wife's telling him all about the Gunworks rifles. And he's like, yeah, show me one of those. He goes, yeah, I'll take one. And so, there's this huge crossover, and it's just amazing because the helicopter too is like a little bit like the bush plane, right? It gives us this utility because we like the outdoors. We want to go hunting. We want to go fishing. And the helicopter allows us that versatility, and it's a time machine, right? Your time is valuable. That's why you have an airplane. You can, I can come up here. It took me less than 2 hours to come here from Phoenix. And Derek says, well, you're going to fly all the way up here. I go, well, I just need an excuse to go flying today anyway.
I'm the same way.
He said, you sound like my dad.
For an excuse.
Yeah.
Give me something.
Yeah. So there's just such a great crossover. And, our customers are professionals, right? They fly their own helicopter. They're passionate. They recognize the value in a piece of equipment. So when you set a Gunworks rifle on the table, it's like setting our Airbus helicopter out on the ramp or your TBM. Yeah. And it doesn't take much to see that these are probably the top aircraft in the world and these are the top guns in the world. And, it's a small fraternity.
I really, really like the equipment connection, between the two. And for me, if I think back over my journey in aviation's just a few years old.
Wow.
I mean, I've always wanted to do this, but it's something when we moved to Cody a few years ago. I moved from Burlington, which is a 45-minute commute. It essentially opened up the door to be able to start that training because Cody's airport's so close and so accessible. Sure. And I could come here at 5:00 in the morning and in the summertime and get a couple hours in before work. It just it made that a possibility. What it's done for me in terms of the challenge, and the private pilot was one thing.
Sure.
Instrument was a totally different experience. Like
yes.
It was a challenge. And then getting into this bigger plane that's completely different.
Sure.
And, flying into all these different airports. I mean, we went all the way up to Nome and back this summer. That was
did
cool.
you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was really cool.
That's a haul.
Yeah. For me, what it did for me in terms of like the mental stress of learning something new, right? Putting me in that position. Like it really changed me this year doing that. Like just the challenge and the risk and the stress and the goal setting and the forced effort and the learning. Like it there's more to it than just the time machine piece for me. I think the actual challenge and accomplishment of doing something new and training your brain to think another way, like it did something for me. It was very, very beneficial for me.
And you'll realize that 10 years from now or 20 years from now, you're going to find something else in aviation that will challenge you the same way. I just recently went and did upset training in Phoenix at this company called APS, which you should go to. They have aerobatic airplanes that they give you training in, which I could never really get my head wrapped around why they did that and not just put you in the jet or the turboprop or something. Well, they're trying to build the skill set, right? So that you have time to evaluate all that. They put you in the back of a fighter jet with a hood on, and they get block airspace, 18 to 36,000 from the military, and you go to 36,000 and you stall the airplane at 36,000. You get inverted. You do all these things that you would never do in your airplane, but
it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, but it gives you the skill set to handle these upset training. Some of the best training I've ever had. And I say that about when I went to get my P-51 check out at Stallion 51. I went down there. I spent a week. It was 12 hours of intense training. And the first day I had to loop the airplane in the buffet and not depart it. And I thought, well, I don't think I'm going to pass this class because I don't know that it's so sensitive.
Basically right at the stall.
So you 250 knots, pull to the buffet. You're in the buffet.
Only pull enough G's that it's just right there.
And can't let it go.
All the way around.
All the way around. You get to the top, you're only 90 over the top. So there's a very narrow margin between buffet and departure. And if you stall it inverted at the top, you'll probably snap it and spin it. And then you're doing this. So it honed my skills. And I think that's positive transfer in everything else I do. Because in your airplane, you could hold it in the buffet pretty easy. And there's probably a way more margin, but this is honing your skill set. But I have 11,000 hours, Aaron, flying helicopters and airplanes.
That's so cool.
And I go to this class and I'm like, oh, I need to call like 6 of my customers and tell them they must go do this, And so there's never something not to learn in aviation. And when you quit learning, then that's when you might need to decide to check out.
Well, if we look at what I just proposed was the one of the biggest values for me. I haven't recognized the value of the time machine piece yet. Like we're just embarking in that.
Sure.
For me, the big value that I've pulled from it so far is the challenge and accomplishment.
Yeah.
Right? It's that. It's like putting that in front of you and then achieving that.
Sure.
And just like you thought, it's like there's no way, and then it's like okay, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, I've got this.
Right.
And just going through those phases, one of the things that I really really want to try to capture in our training, and I've got big plans to kind of update. About every 4 or 5 years, we go through and just really overhaul our training program to bring in all the new learnings. Because I mean, a lot of the training reflects my experience, failures, successes, products,
Sure.
innovations, bringing those into that program. So it's time for a new overhaul, and I'm really interested in this system 1 and 2 thinking, right? And you see this big time in aviation. It's like the things that you can read off a checklist, right, or do through that process, and then the things that have to be automatic.
Yep.
Right? And how do you bake in, and we've always known this, we've always talked about this in our training program. It's like, how do you bake in the right things to happen automatically, and how do you identify the right things to go in your checklist? So like one of my graduation duties in my airplane was to go put my limitations down. That was one. But another one was to make my own checklist. Mm-hmm. Right? Here's the checklist that the training guys put together. Here's the checklist that discombobulated form out of the POH. Mm-hmm. Okay, what's my checklist look like? Mm-hmm. And I actually did like a 8.5 by 11, and it folds up. So it's got like inside outside, mm-hmm. and it flows with like phase of flight. Mm-hmm. But then if I want to, I can open up that inner flap, and I've got all my V speeds, I've got emergency procedures, I've got some other information that I wanted to have access to that I didn't want to go digging for.
Sure.
And that was actually pretty cool. There was a really cool app in the TBM for emergency procedures, and so it's called TBM Performance. Mm-hmm. And so it's got all the emergency procedures. So when I want to brief those, I can just go in and just check those, and it's like, there it is. I can brief it and kind of bake those responses in. It was a cool experience for me. Now I think, okay, how do I bring this to shooting?
Sure.
And the thing that we have in aviation that's different in shooting is, if we don't do a good job, we die.
Yeah, right.
or we piss away $3 or $4 million, right?
Right.
And in shooting, it's you make a bad shot.
Yeah, you miss.
And miss would be nice.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not a bad shot. Yeah. How can we instill a sense of not urgency, but a sense of a total ownership of that outcome and a responsibility to be perfect? Mm-hmm. in like shooting and hunting space. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's so fun to shoot rocks and to shoot steel and to shoot at the range. But I think one of the risks is we train ourselves to realize, oh, that was a bad shot, I'll just take another one.
Right.
Where when it's hunting, we have this tremendous responsibility.
And pressure.
Yeah, to make it perfect.
Right.
Now, sometimes it's like a really, really big animal, and you miss. It's like it's the most disastrous loss of all time. But that's not the case most of the time. Most of the time, it's just an animal, and it's just the difference between success and failure. And how do we instill a really strong desire to be perfect in that shot? Right. And I feel like that's kind of a thing for me for this next phase, is this pursuit of perfection and the mentality and ownership of that. Yeah. Similar to the way we have it in aviation, but slightly
blending
different.
that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that when you develop your own checklist, I think that's so important because, when you first start flying, you read and do.
Yeah.
And when you become a professional pilot or you're a pro pilot, you have a flow and verify.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what you're mentioning is really great because my wife and I were talking about this, she's like, okay, well, I've got to, get set up and what's the flow? If you incorporated that flow
Yep.
into procedure so you could flow it and then verify the
Yep.
things that you need to verify. But the scenario-based training, you mentioned that earlier. I think that is really, really important because when we go fly and you're training in an environment, but when you go to the Class Bravo airspace, you don't know what you're going to get. Right? They're going to tell you to do this, tell you to do that, and then the distractions come in.
Yeah.
right? So there's all these different things that
But
are
it's so
similar
though.
to
If
the
you can
shooting.
stay ahead of the shot, right? Stay
Yeah.
ahead of the gun. You can be 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Right.
Then you never get behind. You
Right.
get behind, then you forget something. You make a mistake.
Right.
Every time.
And I always tell my students when I'm flying with them in high performance airplanes, I said, the throttles are as fast as you can think. So if you're going 200 and you're only thinking at 150, pull the throttles back to 150 because there's no requirement that you go 200 miles an hour unless you're on an arrival.
That's a nice way to think of that.
And unless you're on an arrival that requires you to be there. But don't go flying around faster than your brain can think. When you get better, you can keep the power up.
I just did that instrument check ride. Same thing. It's like we trained, don't fly faster than you can think.
Yeah.
Not explicitly like that, but that's what I was getting.
And the instrument rating, I will tell you, is probably one of the hardest ratings to get.
It was. I think I've got an engineering degree. I think it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I would agree.
And some of that might be just the fact that I'm older, and like I haven't crossed 50 yet, but I'm scaring it real close. But it's like I'm not the same that I was when I went to school. Yep. Like when I'm 20 and in school, my brain worked way different. So maybe an engineering degree is harder than an instrument rating, but engineering degree at 20 versus instrument rating at 50, little different scenario.
Yeah. I just trained my son this last year. He took his private helicopter check ride in my A-Star, and then 3 days ago he took his fixed wing add-on in Dillon's Beech T-34, one of the ones I learned to fly in. Mm-hmm. And he's 22 years old, so things come like that, and it can be a little irritating, like he comes in and he lands the helicopter, and I'm like, do that again, and I just want to make sure it wasn't an accident, but they're fine motor skills. And you can feel, as you get older, right, it takes longer to absorb things. And you're a perfectionist, so that's probably to your disadvantage of training. Because
makes landings very hard.
Makes landings very hard. It makes approaches very hard. You want to be perfect, and you're an engineer, so there's a number, and that's the number. It isn't 5 knots faster or 5 knots slower. That's the number. So I think all of us that have engineering background or discipline find flying to be very difficult at times because we force ourselves to be perfect.
But then again, it's the same thing with wind. There's no number in wind. Like you can't measure it. Like you have to feel it. And it's kind of the same in aviation. There's things
you have to feel.
You have to feel it.
Yeah, it's a stick and rudder. When you're landing certain airplanes, you can have all the numbers right, but it's a feel. It's that fine motor skill you're trying to develop, and your eyes are looking, and there's a lot going on. But there's great positive transfer.
Yeah. Well, I'm really, really excited about aviation and like what it's doing for me as personally, but also like what I'm able to pull from that in now my experience in that with the shooting. And I think aviation is exceptional in the training space, the maturity of the knowledge and information, the dissemination of it. You go look at all the instrument rating courses, like those are all pulling from standard training practices and manuals and systems. And so there's this cohesion and consistency. And some people do a better job of explaining the details and diving in. It's great. With shooting, it's not like that. I feel like it's the Wild West in terms of knowledge. There's so much out there that is not right. And there's no standardization that I think there's a lot of ways to go sideways in your education and knowledge. So for me, that consistency and that system that exists in aviation is something that I really admire and appreciate and have always tried to do in our classes. We went from like a 2-day school where we tried to just ram everything in, and then it became a 4-day program, a couple different levels, and that turned into 7 days, the situational based training, and then we put 2 or 3 little 1-day clinics into that, and so it's really expanded in the depth that you can go into. And I think that our consistent dissemination of information has really helped a lot of people that are coming up and trying to do very similar things to what we're doing. It's kind of helped teach and educate those guys.
Sure.
And, I've trained a half dozen trainers that are out there in the world now doing training
Sure.
elsewhere, and they've been informed and improved,
Sure.
by that experience. So I do think that we're looking forward to, some interesting changes and developments and standardization in our industry. We've seen a lot of maturity in, all the rifle systems that are getting built out there.
Sure.
The shooting technology that's been, brought to bear by lots of different manufacturers. And so we're kind of seeing a lot of collection at the top of, excellence. And I'm hopeful that we can see our industry, further mature into, maybe more of this perfection goal.
Yes.
That I've talked about, where we're just trying to become better. We have pressures in our space, especially in hunting, for this ethical,
Yes.
Nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
and people trying to impose their values and standards on other people, which I just absolutely abhor. I think it's terrible. It's not American at all.
Right. Well, on that note, I watched all your courses when I was picking ammunition, right, for my wife especially. And so I bought her a 6.5 PRC. And every one of the animals we shot was shot with a 6.5 PRC. Now I have for my Nexus a 7 and a 300, which I haven't shot yet. And I can see there's a certain place that you need the 7 and you need the 300 for depending on the situation. But reading and listening to your podcasts about the Berger bullets and the penetration, I should have brought one, but how they expanded and what they did, and we hit in the cavity, in the kill zone cavity, and dropped every one of them. It's just really amazing. But a lot of it is being comfortable shooting the gun accurately is far more important, and that's what I took away from the L1 course. I didn't realize. I mean, my son-in-law was with me, and we were eating dinner in town on the first night, and I'm like, he was, "What do you think?" And I said, how did I ever do anything in the gun business? Because I found out how little I knew. I know nothing about ballistics or anything. I mean,
But it's not that the science.
Science isn't hard.
No,
science isn't hard. But the fact that you split it into 2 classes, I think, was really, really good, because you need that foundation. Just like it would be like someone saying, "Hey, Aaron, let's just go shoot an instrument approach."
Yeah.
Well, you never flown an airplane. I mean, that's not going to end well.
Yeah.
Right. So you need the fundamentals. And then the L2 class, it kind of all started coming together. And it's just like the upset training. You need the baby steps, and you need to understand the fundamentals before you can go to 36,000 feet, install an airplane, and hopefully it turns out okay for you. So I think that's what you're explaining, the positive transfer in aviation to what you're doing. And as far I don't know a lot of people that are doing what you're doing. I don't know many gun manufacturers that offer the type of weapon that you sell, the validation that you do on nobody does. And then offer a training class.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
It's like you try to do all that stuff. How can you do it all exceptionally well?
You can't. Yeah. And I remember my neighbor told me, "Oh, you're not buying a gun, you're buying a system." And I thought, system? What do you mean a system? Well, now, the binoculars, the new BR10s, and the class, the app. I mean, it's...
So let me clarify. I think we're doing exceptionally well. You can't do it exceptionally well and make money. That's the trade-off.
Right.
You got this trade-off. It's like, to do it exceptionally well, you have to be willing to dump the cash in to make it great.
Right.
And you look at the dollars we spend in R&D and the dollars we spend with team and information creation and all of that. It's huge.
Yeah.
And the challenges, like, oh my gosh, the challenge of making ammunition that works with a gun and everything's consistent, lot after lot, shot after shot, like that. That's where all the great hair comes from.
Right. And I had one of my customers tell me, "Oh, how much is that Gunworks ammunition?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's $3 or $4 a round, whatever it is." And he's like, "Wow, that's a lot. You can get this, whatever, name the ammo, And I'm like, "Seriously? You're going to spend $12,000 on a gun. You're going to shoot, 20 rounds a year if you shoot a lot, maybe, right? Why would I do that?"
Yeah. Well, the truth is, there's some guys out there that make ammunition that is absolutely phenomenal. And I don't want to pick sides, but it's like I can go pick the top 3 or 4 ammo guys, and I can go find a product line they make that is great. it's great up until the point that they need to substitute a powder or they need to change this or change that. And then all of a sudden you got 100 feet per second variation, right? Right? Or it doesn't shoot as good in your gun anymore. So like inside of a production, consistency.
Sure.
It's hard for us to beat it sometimes.
Sure.
Like just absolutely phenomenal stuff.
Wow.
But then you go and buy some 6 months later, or you pick up a box that's different, or a year later, and now it's completely different. Now your gun's ballistics are not right. Now your gun's zero's not right. Now the group size your gun shoots is different. That's where it'll get you.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can make phenomenal stuff. It's just when you play the factory ammunition game, buy enough to wear out your barrel. Find something that works, buy a lot big enough to wear your barrel out. Don't worry about it after that.
Right.
Fine. Works.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But like we talked about earlier, it's easy to make one or two of something, but production
or 1,000 or 25,000 or 50,000.
Yeah.
But then to do it again a year later, the same.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. Yeah, and the Revic optics. I mean, I have all Revic scopes on all of our guns, all of our customers. That's what we sell them.
Our 20-year anniversary year is next year. So you have a big celebration like that, or kind of you start reflecting, you start thinking about, oh man, that's pretty cool. You start looking back. I'm not a big guy for looking back and reminiscing. Like I don't dwell in memories unless there's a really bad landing, and then it's like
I remember that.
Yeah. But so looking back, it's actually kind of interesting. When we started doing this, nobody was doing this kitted system, turnkey. I mean, the concept of it's been around since back when the Europeans and the British were sending these awesome kits for people out colonizing the whole world. It was a turnkey system, right? Calibrated sights and ammo and everything. But nobody was really doing it in our modern time, So we brought that. The concept of a ballistic turret existed. I remember seeing a Coloscope that was built in 1910 that had a range calibration on it.
Oh, really?
1910. In the old Vernier sights, they would calibrate those in distance.
Yep.
It wasn't MOA. It was 400 yards.
Right.
So the concept of dialing your distance it's been forever, right? But it's like we made it so that you could true your ballistics and then make your turret so that you had a turret that matched your data and it wasn't generic.
Right.
That was our big push in innovation there.
And when did that start?
That was in 2006. I actually did a patent at the time.
Oh, really?
For that ballistic turret and that true BC process. And then if you look at 2011, go back to 2008, 29, 2009, 2010, like we were developing a rangefinder that had a ballistic engine on it. And when we started taking that out in the field to validate it, I'm like, well, how do I know that this solution that I'm getting is real? And so I developed a little ballistic app at the time. There weren't smartphones. It was a Windows PDA, like a Windows Mobile 6. Mm-hmm. And so we bought these PDAs, and you could take them out there, and you could put your ballistics information in and calculate your solution. And I did it basically to verify, rangefinder data for field verification and setup. Because like this rangefinder with ballistics on it was completely new. Nothing existed like it in the world at all. And so we did the PDA, that mobile. Mm-hmm. There was one military application that existed at the time, right? But there weren't a bunch of programs there.
Wow.
And then you go 2011, we introduced the BR2, so the rangefinder with the ballistic engine on it. It's like, dude, that was revolutionary. We didn't have a competitive product in that space for 5 years. And the first one that showed up was a Leica HDB binos. And it just used a table lookup program that interpolated a couple column sets of data. And I know that because we developed the program for Leica. Oh. So you'd go online, you'd download this data table to your SD card and then plug it into binos. We made the program online that pulled that information down.
Interesting.
And then a couple of years after that, SIG made it to the market with theirs. It's like we beat those guys to market by 7 years. You look at that smart scope we did in Revic, the Gen 1, that was 2017. Anyways, I'm waxing reminiscent about this, but the point was like we've been doing this for a very, very long time. And you go out into the world right now and you see there's a lot of new people. There's people that have discovering some of these new things and they're really excited about it and they're sharing it through social media and YouTube, et cetera. It's like, we've been here for a long time.
Yeah.
And that institutional knowledge and momentum of how to do things the right way, it's trickled into the industry. Look at our negative comb on our rifle stocks. Like, that's showing up on everybody's product now because it's a great innovation, because it changes the way you interface with your rifle. Understanding the physical characteristics and properties of how that recoil impulse works drives you to develop products a certain way. It drives you to build techniques and share techniques that are out there. There's some new discoveries about the rifle, body connection and how to change some stuff. And it's like,
hello.
Hello. So I do think that there's a lot of learning left to do and there's a lot of innovating left to do, but I do see the whole industry kind of collecting into this area. And, hopefully that coalescence, brings some consistency. I do believe it always brings better value to customers.
Sure.
Right? It always does. There's always somebody better at making something, for a lower cost.
Right.
So they don't have the cost of innovation, right? They don't have to stumble on 3 or 4 generations of stock design to get to the optimum dimensions. They just screenshot our stock off of the internet and then take that design geometry and apply it, and now they're there like so much faster.
Sure.
But that's how industry and
works.
innovation works, is it just accelerates the pace. Do we see anything like that in aviation?
It's different. Aviation is different because of the certification process. When you have the FAA and EASA involved, making changes is really difficult. And it's become, I think, increasingly difficult to certify new products for that reason. So if you look at the type certificate on your airplane, it hasn't changed.
No,
they've just
TBM
added
700.
Yeah, they've just added models to it.
It's very interesting. Have you watched the rise of Epic?
Yes.
Have you been inside an Epic?
No.
I have. It's really cool. There's a gentleman that just got one here on our ramp.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the coolest airplane at our airport, I think.
Really?
But so you go check one out, and they've all the flows are like your flow for takeoffs right here. You got green lights, you're done. Like, it's really, really cool how they built that. And you start digging into the story, and they just got certified this year, just barely.
Yep.
And they've been building airplanes for all this time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were
experimental airplanes.
Mm-hmm. And what they got to do was rapid iteration and development. And it allowed them, I think, to leapfrog quickly. This is better, this is better, this is better, and adopt it. And they didn't go certify that airplane until they'd achieved kind of like the top of that trajectory curve. And now they get certified.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like you said, they're locked in, but now they've got this system that is very, very advanced and mature.
Yep. Well, my friend builds the Game Bird aerobatic airplane,
Mm-hmm.
and they started on that project in less than 4 years, from the prototype to certification, which is unheard of. And that's because of the tenacity of one of the owners that just really kept the pace up with the FAA and tried to navigate the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
But they were in the business before of working for different
You said ideation to certification.
3.5 years.
That's impressive.
And this is an incredible airplane. You'll hopefully get to fly one sometime. It has incredible low-speed handling characteristics. He had worked for several of the competitors for years and tried to get them to change things, and nobody would change anything. And he met another customer friend of mine and said, who was into aerobatic competition, and said, let's try and buy this company and then we can fix it. So they went in and tried to buy the company, and they couldn't get a deal done. And so my other customer friend said, well,
let's just do it.
If you could build an airplane from scratch, what would you do? And he wrote it all out. And he says, let's do it. I'll fund it. And they've delivered 129 airplanes, certified airplanes. They're in the black. They're making money. And, but they had tribal knowledge, is what I call it, which is what you have. You have tribal knowledge that you know how to take that knowledge and maneuver it into actually a new product or a new design or a new process, whatever that is. So that's what they do. And they build everything like you do. Like the raw material comes in this door and finished airplanes come out this door. They paint them. They do everything.
That's pretty cool.
And they're in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Composite, aluminum?
All composite, carbon fiber, plus minus 10 Gs airplane.
No way.
Yeah, it's impressive.
I was supposed to go do upset training in it's T6, right?
Yeah, they have a T6 program.
In their game bird at Billings in September.
Oh yeah,
with Goldberg Aviation.
Oh yeah,
and I was signed up, and we're going to go there. It's going to be great. And then I had this last minute hunt in Tanzania come up, and so I'm like, oh,
I got to go do that.
Yeah, I did. I had to go do that.
But the upset training is great. But you know that's where aviation is. It takes people thinking outside the box a little bit. And there's a process that's been done, you know, Bell Helicopter, Airbus. You know, we've taken the A-Star from this A model to the H-125, the B-3E that we brought here. You know, my friend Didier LaSalle landed that on Mount Everest twice. It's impressive.
It's a great story, by the way.
It's a fantastic story to say, hey, this is, you know, what we can do. But there is a stop block. I mean, you know, you do come up the physics. As my one engineer friend says, God's wind tunnel doesn't lie. You know, you can do anything you want in finite element analysis. You can do all this fluid dynamics, and then you get out into God's wind tunnel, and it wasn't what we thought.
Yeah.
So, but again, you need to test, and I think that's what, you know, a company like Epic, they are doing what you're doing. They're putting money into research and development, and most companies' research and development budget is quite small. You know,
ours is huge.
Yeah.
Relatively, it's huge.
Yeah, compared to your total volume, it's probably huge. But what is the
if you look at all the stuff we fail at?
Yeah.
Here's a good example. So we did a bipod. I wanted to do a bipod for 10 years. I have a bipod that I developed in like 2016, and it, in normal fashion, I took it way too far. I basically had both legs would deploy. You'd grab one leg, pull it down, both legs would deploy. Like it was connected with a gear mechanism. Like it was too much.
Too much engineering.
Too much. And got to the point where I'm like, all right, pause it. We got to stick a fork in it, walk away. And came back to the drawing board a few years ago and said, okay, here's what we actually need to have, not what we want, but this is what we need to have to win. And so we built this bipod that we put out on the marketplace, and it absolute tremendous success. But it probably took us probably just over 18 months, not quite 2 years, but over 18 months of an engineer working on that quite a bit, and then prototype it, you know, fail, you know, try to innovate something, prototype it, you know, fail it, and cycle, and then finally we get one ready to the market. We put it out at the marketplace. We sold like 1,000 of them and realized we had a problem. Like there was a spring problem, or there was a problem. I literally replaced those first 1,000, you know, with the second 1,000 that we produced. I sent them to those clients and got back what we could and tried to scrap everything so that it wasn't out there. Like, ouch, that hurt.
Yeah.
And then we've just made one additional improvement right now. We changed the material from aluminum to titanium. So we've got the current version has a titanium yoke material. And I mean, we've put 10,000 of those things in the marketplace. Wow. So massive engineering, you know, testing, maintenance, design, development, et cetera. And we have a little company that we have a couple patents on it. Mm-hmm. Not everything's patented, but some key components we patented. So we have this company, and I know exactly who they took them to, but they took them to this Chinese vendor that's making tripods for everybody and said, hey, rip this off. And literally copied, not verbatim, but probably a 90% copy of that product. And they put it on the marketplace, and it's for sale for $150 less, something like that. And they literally copied patented things that we have. But I promise you that company didn't spend $1 on design. They literally just outsourced it and gave it to that Chinese vendor and said, hey, make this product for us. And no R&D, right? No development costs, right? And then they bring it to the marketplace. Obviously, they probably didn't understand. They're a small, young company. They probably don't understand like the patent space and how that works and how you got to be careful,
right?
Especially when you're copying verbatim somebody's product, you have to be aware.
Sure.
So they're going to get a little bit of an education, but but that whole concept of going first and the cost of that is just massive compared to
being second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge.
But I think you develop a better company and you develop better products because you have the ability to test, and your customers, like I said to Dylan, you'd go to ask somebody about their Dylan reloader, and Mike had a no bullshit warranty on his reloader. If anything breaks on that reloader and you call them right now, they give it to you for free. There is no warranty.
I don't know if we broke anything, but we wore some shit out on those things.
And they'll give you new shell plates, whatever. I mean, I used to see them, sending stuff out for free. Well, your customer base, these people, I mean, the people I've met that shoot Gunworks rifles are like disciples for you, right? I mean, they're
for sure.
Yeah, they're like me. They're like, hey, listen, I shot and hunted on Kentucky windage, not on actual science of shooting. And I went on to a class for 1 week. I bought a $12,000 rifle, and we shot 5 times, and we have 5 animals.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, I'll tell you, I have stumbled into the best customer group that exists. We didn't do it on purpose. Like it just happened, and I'm so thankful for that. It's like everybody, you get lucky in business. You're like, okay,
yeah,
I'll take
anything I can get.
I'll take it. But our customer group is truly the greatest.
Yeah,
because I've stumbled into successful, intelligent, busy, driven, everything type people, like accomplished, and those guys appreciate that last 4 or 5%.
Yes.
And they're willing to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that willingness to pay for it funds our company. And our company spends all of its money doing cool shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all we do. Like, one of these days, I'm going to get old enough, I'm going to think, oh man, I'm going to have to save some dollars and think about retirement and do normal stuff. But it's I'm not there right now. Right now, it's I'm driven. What is the next thing that we're trying to create?
Sure.
And our customers are participating in that story of development, because it's that money that you spent with me, a significant amount of that money is funding our engineering group and the team that brings the next thing.
Right.
You probably pay, that rifle system probably paid in some part in the development of the Index.
Sure.
Right. And the Gen 2 NX2 receiver. And it just continually develops and grows.
And when I got the first Index for one of my customers, and I opened it up and I called my neighbor. I'm like, hey, you need to come over and see this because you need one of these. And it's just a work of art.
Yeah.
Right. It's truly a work of art. And that's what is so interesting. When we bought those BR10 binoculars, they didn't come in time. And so our sales rep, Blake in Phoenix, says, I'll give you my demo pair to use for your hunt. So we went up and my wife and I used them, and she shot that animal. And, I thought, well, your other binoculars were great. I mean, how could these be any better? Well, they are.
Yeah.
They are better. And that is because of research and development. That's because of spending that profit that most people would just take on developing better products.
And you know what it cost me? This is so stupid. I didn't want to make any more of the Gen 1 because the Gen 2 was happening and it was better. And I turned off the Gen 1 and we went 9 months without a product. 9 months. That's it. And I've done that before. It's one of these days I'm going to figure out how to run a business and actually make some money. But it's I didn't want to do that product anymore. I wanted to do the next one.
Right.
And so I turned it off. Generally, a company would say, well, let's just let the market decide, right? And you would milk that product for a couple years afterwards and kind of let it trickle out.
Right.
I just can't do that. It's it doesn't work for me.
You want to offer the best of the best to your customers. But that's the customer you have. That's why there's this crossover with our customers. So many of our customers are really your customers or your type of customer because they want the best.
Well, we've just probably because of my aviation journey, we've really started being cognizant of this crossover and just kind of being aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very excited about what that's going to do for us as a business in understanding that. Mm-hmm. But maybe to wrap up our podcast today, because we could probably do this forever, why don't you tell me just a little bit about your business? And I know that we have customers listening right now that are thinking, man, I want to get into aviation, or I'm ready for a helicopter.
Sure.
So tell me just a little bit about your business to wrap up and
Okay.
close up the podcast.
Okay. My business is we're the distributor for Airbus helicopters for the U.S. and Canada, and we sell all products of single engine and light, medium, twin engine helicopters to typically high net worth individuals, yacht folks, private individuals, folks in your neighborhood right here. A lot of people that are fixed wing that are moving into helicopters. We also broker aircraft. We sell corporate jets, warbirds. We kind of specialize in warbirds just because of our passion. And so through all of that, there's a lot of crossover of folks that we meet. I also, you may have seen it, I fly a BO-105 helicopter. I do an air show routine. I've flown Oshkosh that's fully aerobatic. I'm one of 2 FAA certified aerobatic helicopter pilots. And I did that from a flight test background. But mainly what that does is it validates my product. There's no good reason to go out and do aerobatics in a helicopter other than to show the performance. And I can do my whole aerobatic routine within the certified limitations of this aircraft. Not damage it, not hurt it. I do it low level. And it helps me sell helicopters because it validates what we do and, risk mitigation, right? I mean, I don't just randomly go out and do that. So that's really our business. And, what I love most about my business is the people I meet.
Same.
Right? I mean, I've made some of the most unbelievable friendships, long-term friendships from some super wealthy people, from just average people that sold their business and made some money and said, hey, I want to learn to fly helicopters. I want to learn to fly. I've never flown anything before. And so we end up taking our customers like to Alaska and doing these fly-in events and everything. And those are, it's a really great way for people to kind of come together. And, it's easy to do what you do when you love it.
I wonder if that excitement about that customer has more to do with crossing over and meeting people who are excited about their life journey and are on shared learning journeys that we can identify with. Mm-hmm. Like people that are improving and developing new skills and, expanding their horizons. It's like you can't help but cross over with interesting people.
Totally. And those people want a new adventure.
Yeah.
We sell adventure and you sell adventure. You sell a gun and people go travel all over the world to go hunting. We sell a helicopter that opens up places that, I know I've landed in places in Alaska and around the world that nobody's ever been. I'm positive of that. I mean, I'd land on top of this mountain, my wife and I are standing on top of a mountain in Alaska going, yeah, I'm sure nobody's ever been here, and when you go hunting, you go to places that people don't go.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you're absolutely right. It's people looking for that adventure, no matter what their age is. And I think as we get older, we realize we're at the end of the tape measure. And if I knew what I knew today, I would
maximize
I've got
the last few
keep the fun
there.
meter in the red occasionally going, or in the yellow occasionally going to the red without killing yourself is really the whole plan. But we really value that, and knowing what I know now, would have done things differently. But we have so many customers that have the means, and they just want the adventure, and our job is to try and get them there safely. And we provide training, we do whatever it takes.
And we're all customers.
We're all customers.
And we all have businesses and we're all doing things, but it's like we're all customers as well.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Scott, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate the association. It's great.
Yeah, it's been great, and it's been great to get to know the Gunworks family.
To do more. Like one of these days, I'm in a helicopter. I promise you.
Yeah, we will. I told Derek, you guys need to come down in Phoenix, or we'll be coming up here. We're actually going to bring my wife up for L1 and L2.
Okay.
Again, we'll probably fly the helicopter just because it's fun, and we'll get you up and let you shoot the machine gun out of it or whatever you want.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good one.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email to podcast@gunworks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunworks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.